All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Do Our Things podcast. I'm your host, JT, certified high performance coach, and I've got with us Justin Breen, and we're in the middle of conversation. I just hit record, so continue on, Justin.
Well, you're an entrepreneur who happens to be in the military. One of my mentors is Gary Clavin. Gary is a coach and strategic coach. He's in Abundance 360 with me. He's most at peace when he's driving 200 miles an hour. And he was first in his graduating class, Army Rangers, first in his class, with very little follow through, and he's very high quick start. So he's able to harness all of that, all of his entrepreneur visionariness to be first in his graduating class of Army Rangers. And you remind me of him. Because people like us, we're usually aliens within our own community, vertical, and family, and nobody understands us except the top entrepreneurs on the planet. So as you're transitioning out of military into this world that I'm, 100% in, you'll see that more and more. I mean, you'll just see. So it's exciting and it's smart that you're doing this now while you're still active.
Yeah.
It's a smart transition.
For those just listening, I was actually just saying,
what are you talking about?
I felt like a fish out of water for most of my life, and Justin was on a podcast talking about that. And how, Monday morning I'm coming in talking about, hey, I read this great book, and everyone's talking about the football scores. And I'm like, no one wants to talk to me about this cool nugget that I found, and talking about the different mindset. And I guess I have always been an entrepreneur. I've just been in the service. And now that 100%. I'm transitioning, it's exciting to connect with other like-minded people. So I appreciate the work that you're doing.
Well, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur who happens to be a journalist. So when I was a journalist for 20 years, nobody understood what I was talking about. And I didn't know what people were complaining about. And I was a sports editor, so there were a lot of discussing the NFL scores. But I was just never meant for that world. And I'm very thankful that you've served your country and are continuing to. But you're not really meant for that world. I mean, you're meant for this world. I don't usually say this, but I'm actually you in the future. That's what I am. Yeah. So hopefully this is helpful to you and your audience. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And you know what? And for the longest time, I stayed in the Army for as long as I did because I didn't have clarity on what was next for me. I knew that I didn't want to go work a 9 to 5.
No.
I was okay with the current, if you want to call the Army a 9 to 5, but I was successful and okay. And there's a lot of things that I appreciated about it, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next until I fell into this. I'm like, okay, this is how I can serve. I can serve and do something different, And so that's what we're trying to do here. Start the Do Hard Things movement and help and serve people. And that's what we're doing.
Well, that's an interesting word, serve. That's an interesting word because that's the word. My brain, and I only serve visionaries who live in abundance and look at things as investments, not costs. So I'm either serving my family or the top entrepreneurs on the planet, ones that'll make the investment, or people that aren't there revenue wise yet, but they'll do whatever it takes. They'll do the hard things. They'll make the investment. So in 5 years of being an entrepreneur, zero business background, zero. I have 2 global companies that only partner with top people on planet or ones that'll make the investment. So I've had 2 billionaires who are clients, and it's up to 7 people now who have been or were dirt broke. And they just found a way to make the investment. No excuses. No, what do you cost or charge? Second credit card, loan, whatever. You don't, at the highest level, there are no excuses, only investments. So anyone who makes an excuse to me, I mean, you make an excuse in your world, very bad things happen. So you make an excuse in entrepreneur world, I can't help you. I just can't. Yeah.
So growing up incredibly poor and then being in the military, very much a scarcity mindset. Yep. And I remember when I started this path I was at my low point and I'm like, okay, I've had a successful career. I'm a high performer, but I'm miserable.
That's right.
What do I need to do to unpack the past and what can I do going forward? Yeah. And I remember the very first time I had found a mastermind group and I'm like, I'm going to pay to join a Facebook group. And I wrung my hands over it. I'm like, this is stupid. Who does this? But I was called to do it. And in doing so, making that investment.
What was the investment? What was it?
It was only $97 a month, but I was wringing my hands over it. Like, I can't afford this. Why would I pay to be in a Facebook group and have all these free resources?
No. Yeah. So if you want to know your future, I can just tell it to you. And I'm very low and futuristic, but I'm literally, so I've been an entrepreneur for 5 years. Okay, started first company with zero business, zero, like nothing. I still don't even know what an S corp is. I don't really care about that stuff. But first group, first group I joined, and I'm still in it. It was 200 a year. Okay, so that was fine. No one understood what I was talking about, but it's still, and I'm still in it. Then I joined a 500 a year. Then I joined a 2,000 a year. Then I joined a 5,000 a year. Then I joined a 10,000 a year. And now the two groups I'm in now, they're 25,000 each a year, and I'd easily invest 50K easily. Like that's not. But here's the point. This is why I asked you what was the investment. It wasn't a cost, even at 97 a month. It's an investment.
Investment.
Because it's yeah. So anyone who asks what do you cost or charge, I'll never talk to that person again because they're just living in transactional scarcity world, and people like us don't. They don't live in that. So and then people that live in abundance visionary investment world, the ones that I talk to, they're one of two types of people. They're either running high 6-figure to 10-figure businesses. They see their family and friends whenever they want to and do what they like to do, what they're good at. Okay, so that's me. Or they're going to be one of those people. They're not there yet, but they won't make an excuse. They'll just make an investment. So that's eliminates all this other nonsense that most people are dealing with because they're surrounded by people that are living in nonsense and won't make the investment. They're just making excuses.
No, I love that. I love that perspective. And I have invested. I think the biggest group that I've been in is an $8,000 a year, and that changed my life.
10's the break line. That's what I've seen.
10's the break line.
10's the bound. Yeah, and again, I'm sometimes I answer the question and I could see it. So when my first company, when it started, the minimum was to be 10K a year to be in it. That's when it was always very profitable. It's very profitable. That's when it really took off. And now rates minimums much more than that. But the 10K line is really what I've seen is that's the divider. That's the divider. So you're right. I mean, yeah, you're right there. I mean, and you're not even out of the military yet. That's what I mean. It's a really, I'm so grateful to everyone who served, regardless of whether they're entrepreneurs or not. I mean, I come from I don't know if we talked about it last time. I think we did about my military, roots and what they mean to me. But like, I don't understand why people don't thank the military. Like, it's the most honorable. It's the most honorable thing you can do. And I'm just so grateful to anyone it's just amazing to me. Regardless of where you come from. I mean, just that you have put yourself on the line. I'm just so thankful for it.
Well, and for those that listening, your father was a World War II veteran who served in the Battle of the Bulge, correct?
So that's somewhat correct. So that's a good question. So my father was 61 when I was born. He'd be 105 if he was alive now. He actually died January 18th, so a couple of days ago. So not in 1991, but so he was a first lieutenant, spotter on bomber planes, and he came from nothing. He and his three brothers all served. One of his brothers was a colonel in the Air Force, and another was in the Navy, and another was also in the Army. So all four from the same family served. They were actually in national. It's interesting because we still have the articles. They were nationally recognized because it was pretty rare to have four brothers all serve. And then the parents escaped Russia, escaped the pogroms in Russia, so escaped death to come to America with no English. And so they came from nothing. And then my dad became an attorney in the Nuremberg trials, became the president of an insurance company. And my greatest possession, I should have brought it out for this interview. It's in the basement, but he kept a diary of his experiences fighting in the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest, which was one of the deadliest battles toward the end of World War II. Yeah. So that diary,
it's one that's not talked about much, but yeah, it was a devastating battle. The terrain was absolutely atrocious.
Well, let me tell you something. I mean, one, I'm very impressed that you know that. Very few people know that, and I'm very grateful. I found the diary after he died, and it's besides my family. If our house was burning, I don't, whatever. I mean, say my family, dogs, and then that diary. I don't really care about other stuff, but that diary is one of the greatest things ever written. And it's my connection to my dad. But then I write exactly like he does. Boom, boom, boom. Result, 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 result. He got into uh, he was shot down 8 or 9 times in combat, many times without a parachute. So he writes about that in the diary. I was just because I look for clues in it. I was just reading it the other day, and he was describing in very amazing detail. I mean, you described what it was like to write this diary, but in great detail. Nazi planes fighting against American planes, and the one Nazi plane, the pilot shot down 2 of the 3 American planes, but the third plane got him. And then the Nazi pilot jumped out of the plane, and his parachute never opened, and just hit the ground, exploded essentially. And then my dad and his friends, his fellow soldiers, got the paperwork from the soldier who fell to his death, and he was 19 on his first mission. 19. And that was pretty much every day of that diary. That was, by the way, Christmas Day, 1944. That's when that diary entry is from. Okay, so that's Christmas Day, 1940. Wow. Guy, watch the guy jump out of a plane, parachute didn't open. That was every day. I mean, and so like people make excuses. Sorry, no, thank you, no, not in my world. And then my dad, he, I remember, age 5 to 13, when I had a brain, what I can remember. He would always say the cream rises to the top. The cream rises to the, so I just partner with the cream that rises to the top of the people that will do whatever. They'll just do it. They're no do hard things. And entrepreneur is the hardest thing you'll ever do. I mean, really, it is. But most people can't do it. That's why the world is not filled with people like me, because they can't do it. And that's fine. I just only partner with people that'll do whatever it takes.
What was the greatest lesson that your dad imparted on you?
Yeah, besides the cream rises to the top, besides that, which that's a pretty good one, is if you're a dad, be a dad. So he was 61 when I was born, and my mom was 27. My mom has the most hustle of anyone I've ever met in my life, and most of my days talking to entrepreneurs who are running high 6-figure to 10-figure businesses. They, with all due respect to them, they have no hustle even close to my mom. My mom's the ultimate hustler in a good way. And, so my mom was hustling, working while my dad was raising us. He was 64 when my youngest brother was born. And so he was at home, and my sons are 9 and 7. My wife's a human, thank God. She's a pediatrician. And so she's off working, and she's at home with the kids too, but I'm at home with my kids a lot. So if you're a dad, be a dad. I mean, that's what I learned.
What is being a dad? What were some good characteristics of being a father to you?
If you're a dad, be a dad. I mean, I'm a dad who happens to be an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur who happens to be a dad. So, certainly when I started, it's not as much now because the mindset has shifted, and then my mindset has attracted people that, feel the same way I do. But when I started, I talked to a lot of very wealthy people that had let entrepreneur life destroy their family life. Mm-hmm. And said, hey, you're doing well, great companies, lots of employees, whatever all that stuff is. And I'm like, well, so how's your family? Many times they'd just be like, oh, I never had a family, or I never see my family. You see the hurt. I mean, it was a real room before, but now you can see or hear the hurt in a virtual room. I'm just not that person. I just don't understand it. So I just want to be around for my kids. I mean, it's a fundamental thing.
Yeah. I have triplet 13-year-old daughters, and just being intentional when I think of being a father, it's not just living in close proximity, but like you said, and it's hard because I have to plan that time because I'm still active duty military and I'm trying to be an entrepreneur. And like you said, it's easy to get caught up in the grind of just work. And then I'm like missing out on time. And I catch myself sometimes, okay, I need to put it in the calendar. One of my favorite books is The Family Boardroom, where you make time to spend with your kids, like 4-hour blocks of time. And that was a book written by an entrepreneur for entrepreneurial dads or parents.
Yeah. So I'm 100% simplifier, and I'm the highest D on DIS you can imagine. I'm the most direct person. Directness weeds out nonsense and attracts greatness. But anyway, the first line of my book after the prologue and stuff is, if you are someone who believes that family shouldn't come first, please put the book down. I can't help you. So that's it. That's it. There's no excuses at the highest level, only investment. So you invest in your family. And so, my brain turns everything into patterns. So I keep making bigger investments to be in smaller rooms, but the people in those rooms are making bigger impacts. So it's a formula: bigger investment, smaller room, people in that room are making more impact. And so, okay, keep making bigger investments, bigger. We talked about that pattern from 200 to 25K a year. Okay. So that allows me to spend biggest investment in smallest room, which is my family, where I can make most impact. So it's the same formula. It's the same formula with the same result. I just make more impact with my family. And then people that they talk and they don't actually do anything. They make an excuse and they don't make the investment. That just takes time away from my family. People that take action and make the investment just allow me to spend time with my family. So that's my whole litmus test for people that blah, 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 blah. And then they don't do anything. I just don't have time for those people because they take time away from my family. And that's it. That's it. Like, there's no wavering on that. I can make billions of dollars if I want to, but that's not going to bring me closer to my family. So I just want to make what I need to make. Well, more than that, frankly, but like, I just want to spend time with my family. That's it.
I love that. I love that you got your priorities, you got boundaries around it, because a lot of people don't put boundaries around those things, and they're not disciplined with their time, and they don't know what they want, and they don't realize what's costing them.
Well, they're winning the wrong game. I mean, again, I hear people winning the wrong game. It's really interesting now because, I just keep evolving and I learn every day. And in these conversations, I learn a lot, like in real time. But the thing that I've seen the most lately, and again, and most of my day, besides hanging out with my family, is talking to top entrepreneurs in the world, like the very top, like the geniuses of all geniuses. Many of them are very wealthy. But the thing that I hear now the most is that they're visionary genius entrepreneurs and they're trying to be business owners. They're trapped in their own business. They're trapped by their own success of what they think is success, but they've they lost track of what actually mattered somehow along the way. And I'm just not. I will never be one of those people. I will never be one of those people, because what happens is during conversations like this, I'm very low in ideation on Strength Finders, the Gallup Clifton Strength Finders. There's 34 of them. I'm 32 on ideation. So I'm almost dead last in ideation. But what happens is, if I hear a good idea, I immediately know it's a good idea. And my top three are activate, maximize, achieve. So I'm talking to these people. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll do that. Like my dad, cream rises to the top. That's a good idea. I'll do that. That's it. There's no activate, maximize, achieve. Then the other thing that happens is I hear people complaining about things that are completely irrelevant to me and are meaningless. I'm like, that's a bad idea. I'm not that person. I won't do that. So that's how I get all my ideas and the bad ones. And then I just follow through and actually do what do it or don't do it.
I love it. Taking action. Action driven.
I'm an activator. I don't talk without action's meaningless. I mean, it's overthinkers are underdoers. I mean, people that talk without doing anything, everything that's happened in my life since becoming an entrepreneur, again, with zero business background, zero, is because I've taken action and made the investment. So if you don't take action and make investment in yourself, how can you expect others to take action and make investments in what you do? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you just do it. You get into the plane without the parachute. And most people can't do that. And that's fine. I mean, they're just not meant to do that. I mean, I partner with I've quantified it without quantifying. It's maybe 1 out of 1,000 people. Most entrepreneurs are not like me. They're business owners, and they're small business owners, which is fine, but they're not global visionary entrepreneurs. So even in entrepreneur world, I'm an anomaly, but I just attract other anomalies and aliens.
I like that. I mean, I love it. So tell us a little bit about.
But that's where you're going. I mean, that's where you're going. You can do it. There's no doubt in my mind you can do it. I wouldn't be saying these things. You can do it. You have what it takes to do it. You can do it.
I appreciate that. I have always found myself to be like you said numerous times, an alien, just a fish kind of outside of water.
You're an alien.
Yeah. So
you can do it, and it'll be exciting because, you know, when I started, I reached out to 5,000 people to find my first 5 clients, right? So 1 out of 1,000. It was a different 0.1%, but it was still 1 out of 1,000. And nobody understood what I was talking about. So you're surrounded by, and again, I'm very grateful for the military, endlessly grateful. But most military is the opposite of you. And, 99.9%, you follow rules, you follow orders. Entrepreneurs, no rules. You make your own rules.
I've always struggled with that. You always have someone to answer to in the military. And my thing was like, okay, how can I get my boss to leave me alone?
Not going to happen.
So knowing exactly what they want, they'll minimize the amount of time they talk to me because they know that Teagues has got it. Like, so that was always my thing. It's like, I want to be left alone. What do I need?
Give me the answer. Well, so that's why I mentioned Gary Clavin at the start of this. You remind me of him because I don't know how, I mean, he just was able to do it because he's a lot like you. I'm guessing you have similar Kolbe scores, KOLBE, where you're high, quick start, lower follow through. And for him to be able to graduate first in his class with Army Rangers, I mean, that is, I mean, he's incredibly successful. He's a genius. And what was interesting, because this all comes full circle, is that I was in, this will make perfect sense to you. So I was in one of these, I think it was the $500 group, $500 year group. And I was talking like this. This is hilarious. And I was talking like this. Nobody understood what I was talking about. However, one of the people in there is like, hey, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but the guy who runs my company does. And that guy was Gary Clavin. So he introduced me to Gary. So that's awesome. What I mean. Bigger investment, smaller room, more impact. So you just keep making but I would have never met Gary had I not been in that $500 year group.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Well, I think I see it as a natural progression. I started off with, oh my gosh, how am I going to invest in myself? Why would I do that? And it's like, oh, wow. I started connecting with other just incredible people because when you're in a room like that, there's less and less BS. And then as I escalated that, like you said, the room gets smaller and smaller, but the impacts and the people you connect with, it's incredible. It's incredible who you can connect with.
Well, you'll see at the 10K. You'll see it. Then you'll really see it. Again, without quantifying at the 10K level, 30% understood what I was, maybe 20% understood. At the 25K level, it's well over 80% of the people not only understand what I'm talking about, but they're far more evolved from me. So I'm learning what they're talking about. So I can actually learn. And if I'm not the dumbest or one of the dumbest people in the room, I'm in the wrong room. Yeah. I get bored very easily. I get bored. And it's great because it's who's in the room, but who's not in the room. I mean, it's who's not in the room that's even more important, really, because it eliminates. I mean, my whole company is eliminating wrong fit and just attracting top people on the planet are the ones who will make the investment. It eliminates everything else. And the byproduct of that is I haven't done outbound sales, haven't done gimmicks there's been none of that in years because I just introduced top person to top person. They introduced me to top person. It just eliminates all this scarcity stuff that most people are dealing with.
So tell us a little bit about, you were a journalist for many years and then you started like BrEpic. How was that life? How did you transition to BrEpic and what is the way ahead? How did you make that switch and that transition?
Right. So, do hard things, right? So most people can't do that. So they can't.
I love that you laugh about it because it's like most people won't do it.
Well, I'll explain what that is, and then So February 10th, 2017, I was a full-time journalist. Had job salary cut in half because that's journalism. Tried to find a full-time job, couldn't find a job. incorporated April 16th, 2017. Then I was working full time at half the salary. Over the next 6 weeks, reached out to 5,000 people to find first 5 clients. So 999 no's for every yes. Got 5th client, resigned next day. And then June 5th, 2017, Robert Feeder, top media columnist in Midwest, did a story. I started my own firm. So that was just a start company. Most people can't. They're not capable of doing that. And best day of journalism career, which was also the worst day when my job salary cut in half. That's not even top 50 worst days of being an entrepreneur, not even in the top 50. So most people, I was talking to, my sons are 7 and 9 and they're both travel soccer. And I was talking to one of my 7-year-old's friends. I'm like, cause he was complaining he was complaining in practice. I'm like, don't stop complaining, get out there. And I was telling him, I'm like, when I started my company, guess how many people I reached out to find first 5 clients? He goes, 50? I go, 5,000. And his jaw was like cartoonish drop. So that 7-year-old's reaction are most people's reaction. They just can't even imagine doing it. And they stop at the start. They don't even get past the start. But I can't help those people because they'll never start anything. Not only will they not start it, but if they actually did, they can't do that. They can't do it.
5,000. That is a astronomical
but
number,
again,
right?
People stop, so they keep asking me about that. They can't get past that. That's my point.
How did you handle the rejections?
You can either do this, yeah. So okay, do hard things. Being an entrepreneur is the hardest. So again, most of my days talking to the world's top entrepreneurs. I'm not talking about business owners. I'm not talking about humans. I'm not talking about consultants. No. So I haven't met one entrepreneur at the very highest level, the very highest, that hasn't overcome at least one of the following 4 things. Most are 2 or 3, and then most of my days talking to all 4s. So the 4 things are bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy, 2, depression, 3, the highest level of anxiety you can imagine, and 4, likely and or possible traumatic experiences as a child or young adult. So you're at least one of those things based on, you said you grew up very poor.
I've had probably 3, almost 4.
Right. So yeah, every time I do this, it's usually 3 or 4 because my brain simplifies into patterns. That's been my greatest, what I've learned about myself. That's my greatest ability. I can see it, but then not when I see the pattern, I actually do something about it. So again, people use those 4 things most people use those things as excuses their whole life. Entrepreneurs, the highest level, execute. There are no excuses. You can't, there's no excuses. So, I mean, I'll give you an example. This is one of my newest partners. It's this guy. So this guy grew up in Burma before Burma. Okay, so his grandfather was decapitated. Wow. It's entrepreneur life. So his father took him when he was like, I don't know, 8, to Hong Kong with $10 in their pocket. They created 3 8-figure businesses, and then he's now older now. The person who hired my firm, he's started a company that basically is an at-home robot for like people who are by themselves with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and things like that. It has a drone on it and pill dispenser, keeps them company. That's entrepreneur life. I mean, I've had 3 of the 4. The only one, knock on wood, I've never had to worry about is bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy. But that you can either do this or you can't. You can either do hard things or you can't. And I mean, it's way harder than hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Yep.
Yeah, you have to be self-disciplined. You're going to have to embrace failure and push through no.
There
People are going to reject you.
There is no failure. Yeah, no failure. Yeah.
No, 5,000 clients to 5. I just think about that number. Just thinking about the process.
They always stop that because they can't get past that. That's my point.
Yeah.
I immediately I launched a second company. We just launched it and it's getting revenue already, which is amazing. So it's LinkedIn without the BS. So it's high price point, invite only connectivity platform. Okay. So
LinkedIn without the BS. I talk about this all the time. LinkedIn just feels like, I'm talking on a college message board. Like the conversations are so fake.
So it's LinkedIn for the 0.1%. And I like LinkedIn. I have 27,000 followers there, but it's mostly BS. And So I launched this with a partner I'm in Chicago. He's in San Francisco. We're both in Strategic Coach, 10X. And we've met one time in person at a giant launch party that I held. I'm very grateful for that. And I've literally met this person one time in person. So we just launched a giant company. And I gave the speech I gave at the launch party. I was thinking about my dad and my mom and my wife, by the way. But I was like, if my dad can get into a plane 8 times, 9 times many times without a parachute, and then get back in the plane, and it was shot down, then okay, I can start a first company with zero business background and reach out to 5,000 people. I mean, that's okay, easy. If my mom, when my dad died, she had four kids. If she can raise them by herself, then I can start a second company with someone I've never met until that launch party. And then if my wife and I met the day before she started medical school. So if there's anything comparable to basic training or entrepreneur life, it's going through medical school, because I saw that, then I can do this. I mean, that's my litmus test. If those are the 3 most important people in my life, my mom, dad, and my wife. So they can do that. This is easy compared to that. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's medical school is like mental boot camp. And that's a grind.
That's what entrepreneur life is.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what, again, most people, they can't, and that's fine. The world needs more integrators and small business owners. The world needs more of that, because if everyone was like me, it would be chaos. I mean, it'd be complete chaos. But people like me are the ones who will actually do it, make the investment, and then that helps everyone else.
Why did you choose to target the world's highest entrepreneurs?
Because that's me. Yeah.
How did you? When was the light bulb moment for you?
Because no one ever understood what I was talking about until top entrepreneurs understood what I was talking about.
And then you're like, boom! I'm amongst these people.
That's what you are. You're getting there. That's what I mean. So I just kept making bigger investments into small rooms with more impact, and I'm like, oh, finally someone understands what I'm talking about. Yeah. And by no means did I grow up poor, and I'm very thankful for that. The area I grew up in, where I live now, is in the northern suburbs of Chicago, and people, I would say upper middle class to wealthy. This is the cheapest, cost-conscious, scarcity mindset. People drive nice cars, everything. First question, what do you cost or charge? It's just people winning wrong game, many of them living off mommy and daddy's money, which that's fine. But when I was talking like this, no one here understood what I was talking about. So I'm like, okay, I need to find people that understand what I'm talking about. And what I found is top entrepreneurs in the world, around the world. I barely talk to anyone around here anymore, but they're the only ones that understand what I'm talking about. So that's it.
That's fantastic. I mean, I just love the progression that it took you a while to figure out who your tribe of people was. Yeah.
When you start a company, I mean, that's one of the chapters in my book. That's what I mean. This is like your future. But when you start a business, it takes 2 full years to figure it out. And most people say it takes longer, but I'm activate, maximize, achieve, and then I just do it. But it's going to take 2 years. It's not a year. It's not 18 months. It's definitely not 3 months.
I'm about a one year into this, and I'm still like trying to figure out, like, as I've gotten into this, I'm gaining more clarity.
2.
Yeah.
2 well, I just shortcutted it for you. I mean, the answers are there. I mean, it's up to you and people like you to do but those are the answers. I mean, those are the answers, because my brain simplifies into an actual answer. That's what these visionaries are very, very thankful for me, because most of them are all over the place and they can't simplify anything. And so my brain here's blah, 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 simplify into the answer, and then simplify into the connection. It just works. And then those people who are the ideator futurists, they're the ones that create the technologies, the flying cars that employ everyone else. And then my brain simplifies their life, and then intro. It just so happens I am one of those people. I just have more follow through than them.
It's the D on the disc. Get right to the point, and you are definitely very succinct and right to the point, and I love that.
Well, directness weeds out nonsense and attracts greatness. Arrogant people can't stand the directness because they think they're great at everything. Confident people, the people I talk to, they love it because they know they're terrible at almost everything, like I am, but they're really confident in one or two things, and they're like, "Oh, this person knows what he's talking about, so let's go."
I love it.
Right. Well, you're that. You're. I mean, you're the same. You're the same way. You just haven't done it for 2 years yet.
We're getting there. We're on our way. We're on the journey.
I'm saying that because but you'll do it.
Yeah.
You'll do it.
What's let's see here. The question I had for you is what is the this is a question I had for you. You're having an off day. I talked about this morning. I'm having kind of an off day, and there's probably days that you're not feeling on your A game. How do you get yourself back onto your A game?
Yeah, so sometimes I have the answers before they're asked. Hold on, because I have the answer right here. Hold on, I've got it. Chapter 22, learn from tough times, bad clients, or deals that have gone under at the last minute. It's just part of business. Learn from tough times. There is no failure. You learn from it. You learn from it. So end of 2018, I was a journalist. You don't go into journalism to make money. I mean, some people do, but you don't really. That's not why you do that. But so end of 2018, I made more money, basically quadruple of any yearly income I had made as a journalist. And I'd never been more miserable in my life. So I'm like, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Making all this money, never been more miserable in my life. So learn from that. Leaned on my wife, started seeing a therapist, leaned heavily on my mentors. And that's what that chapter's about. But one of my mentors, I had a lunch with him. This was like January of 2019, early January. And I'm like, hey, I don't understand why I'm feeling like this. And he's like, oh, every entrepreneur at the highest levels knows exactly what you're talking about. And he's like, you'll be fine. He's like, the most important thing is you'll go through this again, but it's how you learn from it and realize you'll go through this again. That's entrepreneur life. So that is entrepreneur life. The worst day I've ever had as a journalist is not in the top 50 of worst days as an entrepreneur. And now I just learned, I mean, that's how it is. So it's okay now, but I had to learn that. I'm glad I learned that.
You speak of building an impenetrable mindset.
Mm-hmm.
How does one do that? What does that look like for you? And how would you just advise someone that's working on their growth mindset to build that impenetrable mindset?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good follow up. Sometimes I'm floating around up here, so I'll land the plane to answer that one. So if you're constantly grateful, it's very hard to be ungrateful. It's almost impossible. I actually just posted this on social media right before this interview. If you're constantly grateful, it's hard to be ungrateful. So how am I constantly grateful? To answer your question, the first thing I do every day, every single day, is do a grateful journal to my wife. I write what I'm grateful to her for, because without her, not a good situation. Bad situation. So not to my kids, what I'm grateful for her. That's okay. Okay, without her, bad. My entire book dedication is to my wife, not to my children, not to my company, not my wife. That's it. So that's what I do every day. 6 days a week, no matter the weather conditions. I've done this for 20 years. We live in Chicago. I run outside no matter the weather conditions. So when I'm running, I listen to things like this and people who are constantly grateful. So I just feed gratitude from other people into my head. And then 5 days a week, we talked about LinkedIn. 5 days a week, and I'll include this interview on that. Probably lead it with that, but I do a grateful journal on LinkedIn. So what I'm grateful for that day, Monday through Friday.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's awesome. I love it.
This will be in that. Right. And I've done that for years. And again, when you just constantly, you build this gratitude, and it's great for yourself. But really what happens too is it attracts people who are also very grateful. And it repels people who are arrogant and ungrateful. It repels them, which is fine by me. That's completely fine, because arrogant scarcity people hang out with arrogant scarcity people. And grateful, visionary, abundant people hang out with grateful, visionary, abundant people. So It's just, right mindset attracts right mindset, gratefulness attracts gratefulness, and wrong is repelled by the way I live my life.
It's the law of attraction.
Yeah. And repulsion and repulsion. I think that's the, a lot of folks, certainly when they start, and I was like this too, because I hadn't learned yet, but they try to be everything for everyone. And my brain is two things for one type of person. That's it.
I love the daily gratitude. It's hard to be in a poor state of mind, or if you're in deep gratitude. It's one of the things I've learned from following Tony Robbins. When you're in deep gratitude, you can't be upset. You can't be miserable. And I've dealt with a lot of contentment issues earlier in my life, chasing things. And when I started practicing more gratitude, my life changed. I became happier. I became more fulfilled.
Yeah.
And like you said, I share a lot on social media myself, and I've been able to connect with like-minded people, and having that tribe of people that are like-minded is very powerful.
Well, I mean, we're talking because I heard you on a podcast with Dale Walls, and you were talking about your favorite book, and it was my favorite book, Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. There's got the mug. I think that's the most important book, certainly for people like us, but really anyone, but certainly entrepreneurs at the highest level. I think that's number one. That's number one because, my dad was an attorney in the Nuremberg trials, Nazi war crime trials. So we have tons of photos from the Holocaust, like really, really graphic ones. We have a lot of them. And Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust, Auschwitz, and other places. And then for him to write about that, and then what the meaning of life is, and then most importantly, have the bigger and better future. So if you're a prisoner, you don't have the bigger and better future, you die. And then you're someone like us and you don't have bigger and better future, you don't die, but you're kind of like dead inside. So there's no purpose anymore. So that's why I'm just constantly building mindset, impenetrable mindset, and then creating bigger and better future. It just makes me feel so alive and very exciting.
Yeah. That book is, I've mentioned it so many times on my podcast. Honored to have be on Dale Walls' podcast to talk about that book, because it is so impactful. And it's a true reminder of, no matter how bad you think your life is or how difficult, like this man's life and what he endured, like gives you, like, if that doesn't give you some perspective, nothing will.
Well, this is what I mean. That's why the speech at the launch party was like, my dad can get into a plane. It's anything I do is nothing compared to, or my mom, losing her husband. My youngest brother died of a drug overdose when he was 29. He'd be 40, he'd be 41 now. And my mom has never used that as an excuse. She just never, my wife going through medical school, like that's what I mean. That you just, and then entrepreneurs at the highest level, they've all gone through things like that, much worse than anything most of them, much worse than anything I've gone through. Okay, so you just figure it out. You appreciate what you have, and then you learn from it. You learn from every great thing that's happened to me has followed something horrible, from meeting my wife or starting company or whatever that is. It's just how you learn from it.
The things that we fear in this incredibly abundant society is usually bullshit, because we're not in the Hurricane Forest. We're not in Auschwitz, and these things happened not all that long ago in history. Like,
they're still happening.
They're still, in parts of the world.
I'm fascinated by North Korea. I don't want to give his name because he's tied to the FBI, but he's the most direct person I've ever met. And I don't say that lightly, because most people think I'm the most direct, but he's a million times more direct than I am. And, he's a specialist in China, North Korea, parts of Africa, Afghanistan. And the things that are going on Now, I mean, I'm sure you have access to some of those. The things that are going on that people don't know about right now, those things are going on. They're just, it's just not in our, it's not in our heads. We don't see it, but there's still plenty of, there's still plenty of Hurricane forests and certainly not to the level of Auschwitz's, but there's certainly those type of things going on. And in the cyber world too. It's like, that's like the new war.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we think, we talk about doing hard things and you think your life and you're in a bad, difficult situation, it could always be tremendously worse.
And it can always be worth it always. And that's why I'm so great. Like, I'm just so grateful because it's really interesting. A lot of entrepreneurs, not a lot, but some of them don't believe in a higher power, whether you want to call it God or whatever that is. That's where a lot of entrepreneurs get they stop at that. And it doesn't have to be religion or anything like that. But there's no doubt in my mind that there's a higher power, and whatever that is. And this is a joke, but it's not a joke. The only proof I need for that there's a higher power is that someone like my wife married someone like me. I mean, there's no other there's no other explanation than that. But the point of that is when you know that to be true, at least I know it to be true in my head and my heart. It just makes things a lot easier. And then like you said, the worse things get, if things get bad, there's can all be something worse. But having that understanding of that higher power, it definitely mitigates that at a much higher level, because you're not really, when it comes down to it, you're not really in charge. Even though you're in charge of your own life, there's something else directing or putting things in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about your wife, I want to touch on that. You were on the you guys were featured on the Today Show for 52 consecutive weekly date nights, and I talk about date nights quite a bit in my groups, how important that is.
Yeah.
How did you? I guess what prompted you to commit to 52 dates, and how did you end up on the Today Show, being a dating expert?
International dating expert. So so my first company is almost 5 years old now. February 10th, I guess, is the anniversary when job salary got cut in half. But so in 5 years, I've had 5 truly great ideas, because I'm almost dead last in ideation. So I've had one a year. But if I have a great idea, I know it, and then it's activate, maximize, achieve. So right at the end of 2017, my wife and I first date before, our date was the day before she started medical school. So you don't date someone in medical school. And then we had kids, so we never dated. So I'm like, we need to go out on a date every week without the kids. Okay, that's a great idea. I'll do that. Activate, maximize, achieve. So she didn't think we could do it, but she's not activate, maximize, achieve like I am, which is fine. And so we wound up doing it. And there was no intent to get media at all. But, I run a global PR firm, and I have a pretty large social media following. So every week I would post photos because people liked it. They liked that stuff. And then toward the end of it, Mary Schmeech, who at the time was a Pulitzer Prize winning columnist at the Chicago Tribune, she's like, hey, if you finish this, toward the end of it, I'll do a story on it. Like, okay, thank you. So she interviewed us in mid-December for it, and it came out right around Christmas. And then I was a journalist for 20 years, and I live in this world, so I know what an article like that does. So the Today Show saw that article, and then they reached out to me, hey, we want to be on the Today Show. Okay, so that's how it happened. And again, high quick start, high follow through, activate, maximize, achieve. My wife and I, every Wednesday, it's blocked off. I have lunch with her. So every Wednesday. So I keep doing that. Well, you do it. You don't, because without my wife, and I'll keep saying that, without my wife, terrible. It's just a terrible, terrible situation. And that's, the best part of entrepreneur life is my kids get to see this. They know it's even possible. They see it's possible, and then I get to spend time with my wife. Yeah.
What has been your favorite date? Where did you go? What did you do?
In 2018 or overall?
I guess just overall.
Well, It answers both questions. At the last date we went to in 2018 was at a place called Oriole. Oriole is one of the top restaurants in the country, and it's one of those it's one of those 15 course places, and it's a 2-hour meal, and that's a pretty big accomplishment doing that. Like,
That's a lot of food.
well, it's a lot. Yeah, I can eat a lot. But like my wife and I, she's my best friend by far. And, I just like talking to her. So we always, when it's just us, like, I love their kids, but like, they're young kids. So when I'm just hanging out with my wife, we just have the greatest time. And that date was that was a good one. That was a great one. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Was there something specific about that restaurant or that connection? That's the one that stood out to you as your favorite. What was about it?
Well, it's one of the best restaurants in the world. I mean, that's
so just having the experience of the food and sharing that with her.
Well, it's the experience and then completing the task. I mean,
Yeah.
52 weeks in a row going. I mean, when we, as I was posting those every week, people were like writing, "We don't even have kids and we never go out." Like,
isn't that crazy? That's crazy. Like you doing something like 52 weeks, one date night a week is like on the Today Show. You're a dating expert now. It's like, is it really that? Is the bar?
Well, it's simple, but it's hard. Well, it's simple, and then people are winning the wrong game. So entrepreneur winning the wrong game translates to everyone else. Some people, and again, I'm a dad who happens to be an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur who happens to be a dad. It's a fundamental. I'm not letting entrepreneur life destroy my family life. I mean, that's why it's the first line in the book. That's it. I mean, there are no excuses. It's my decision, but the only people I talk to, they put their families first. They would never let entrepreneur life destroy their family life. They just wouldn't do that.
Oh man, I love it. It's being intentional, knowing what's most important, and protecting that. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's just crazy how the bar is that, like, that's where we're at in our society.
Well, I mean, again, social media, and it's just portraying winning the wrong game.
Yeah.
And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, not as many anymore, but they're focused on winning the wrong game and things. It's just stuff. And then they trumpet all this stuff. And it's just, I just don't care about any of that stuff. I never have. And COVID accelerated it, but well before COVID, I was saying, well before COVID, I was saying there'd be more companies like my first one where it's high price point, low employee count. There's no need for an office. You just do what you like to do and what you're good at. You create value for people. And COVID just, I've always been that person, but COVID just accelerated that. Now people are just like, well, why are we doing all this nonsense? There's no reason to do it. You don't have to go anywhere if you don't want to. And that will continue to happen because people are realizing they've been winning the wrong game. That's all there is to it, right?
Winning the wrong game. I love that. It just makes. There's a lot of people doing that. They're playing.
Well, that's chapter 3, and I'm starting to work on my next book, starting February 1st. I did the first one in 43 days. This one goal is to get it done in 30. I should be able to do that. But that's chapter 3, and Jesse Elder. Yeah, so I talked to him. I used to talk to him all the time. He went off the grid, but I talked to him.
Yeah, he had a little deal with Facebook. He took a break. He seems like he's back on.
He's back on. He's back on. Yeah. So even though I haven't talked to him in well over a year, I talked to him one-on-one. I used to all the time, and we would talk about this. And he's like, "Oh, they're just winning the wrong game." I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So that's what I mean. So the chapter is going to be about him in that discussion. But yeah, Jesse's a great.
Oh, his mindset and right. Really a lot of very impactful. I love watching his videos and just a very different perspective on life. That's really refreshing.
Jesse's a genius, and I really valued our one-on-ones, but that's what I mean. Most of my days talking to Jesse Elders. That's really what I mean. I'm glad you know him. He's a
I've never
genius.
had a chance to meet him. I just know of him. And I've known people that have worked with him one-on-one, and he's fundamentally, give them some different perspective shifts.
Well, I mean, so if I'm not talking to someone like that, who really, I get bored because I'd need to be the dumbest person in the room. But he was talking. We were talking about like great religious leaders, and actually he kind of just did this because he went off the grid, but and he did come back on the grid, but he was off the grid. But he's talking about like all these religious leaders, what really was key, and he said long periods of isolation and just kind of being by yourself. So like Moses walked in the desert for however long. Jesus did that. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting, this long escape. And so those are the conversations I have. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with James Jermidian, who was on one of my previous guests, who went on a 10-day mindfulness,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you call it, like a retreat, where for 8 hours a day, silence, and just focused on mindfulness. And
That's
I don't know, you talk about doing hard things.
Well, that would be. I'm just trying to think of silence in my house when my kids return. That's not your triplets, 13-year-old triplets.
Oh, 3 o'clock comes home. It's like a tornado.
It's like a tornado. Well, so these are things I think about and then actually do something about it. If you actually know the exception to this, I'd like to know, because I've been really thinking about this. For what I've seen, the fundamental reason for any living thing is to create more living things. I haven't seen the exception to that. If you know of something where it's a living thing and the fundamental reason they're here is not to create living things, I'd like to know that. I've been trying to think about it, but the conversations that I have and the people that I partner with, they allow me to live my fundamental purpose, creating living things and nurturing them, but then to think even way higher than that. You know what I mean? Like a much bigger purpose besides fundamental reason. So that it's a really interesting evolution to think about that. But my point of that is, if you can think of any living thing where the fundamental reason is not to create other living things, the only one I could think of is ants that aren't like the queen ant, because they don't actually produce anything. But they help.
They're all working for
They're
the
all
queen
working.
ant to
I
produce.
know. So
I'm
I'm
support of
like,
that mission. Yeah.
Right, because I would like to see it, an article about people that don't have children or can't have children and what they actually create if they have the right mindset, because you have all of this fundamental reason why we're here.
Well, I've always been kind of fascinated with people that don't want to have kids, and how they're really missing out on a lot of opportunity, a lot of just, I was that way for a very long time. I came up from a broken home, and I'm like, how am I going to be a father? Didn't really want to give up my time. Yeah. but having my children, oh my gosh, I've learned so many lessons from them. They've taught me patience. They've taught me kindness. I love them. And I couldn't imagine my life without them now. And I've always been kind of fascinated. People are like, you know what? I just don't want to have kids. I can't have kids.
It's endlessly fascinating, right? And no, that's what I mean. That's why I'm endlessly grateful to my wife, because without her, I never would have had. Maybe I would have had children, but it wouldn't have been like this. Like, she's made me, just barely. She's made me somewhat of a human, like barely. Just on the very fringe of humanity. And then it's been great for her too, because she actually takes chances in life. She actually is adventurous now. She comes from safe home, helicopter parents. That's fine, by the way. But she never would have done. She just wouldn't have taken the chances. So everybody wins. But it is a really interesting, for people that don't have kids, totally fine. It just really is interesting, because I haven't seen the exception where the fundamental reason why we're here is to have other living things. Even for people like us, by the way, where it wouldn't seem so fundamental, and yet we're raising good families. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Biologically, we're we're supposed to procreate and create. It's hard to overcome that urge.
Well, that's my point. Why are we here? That's why I'm a dad who happens to be an entrepreneur. If we're here to fundamentally, that's why we're fundamentally here, correct? Right?
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't make any sense for me. Why, if you do, that's why you asked me earlier, if you're a dad, be a dad. That's my point. This is what I think about all the time. Like, because it doesn't make any sense to me, the opposite of that. It doesn't make any sense.
I really appreciate that, because a lot of people, why do you think so many people get that wrong? Why do you think they're not thinking about that?
Well, because they're talking about the NFL scores. Yeah. You're not having this conversation at the water cooler, I mean, maybe you are, but no, I don't. That is what I haven't been able to understand. Especially in, again, the conversations I have now, most of the entrepreneurs would not let entrepreneur life destroy their family life. But early on, and business owners are not entrepreneurs. That's a fundamental difference. Many business owners let business destroy family life, many of them. And I just couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand it, why they were letting that destroy their family. I just don't, because that's the fundamental reason why we're here. As far as I know, that's why I asked for an exception. I can't find
I can't think of anything. And you saying it in that way really makes me think about that and appreciate that dynamic, because I never thought about it at that level. Like,
that's
what's
how
the
I
meaning
think.
of life? Why are we here? Well,
right.
And so that makes
that's
a lot of sense.
That's why Man's Search for Meaning is my favorite book, because it's really the closest. I think it's the closest you can get to like the real ultimate that I've seen. I haven't read a book that's that. I mean, that how he described it, that's entrepreneur life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the ultimate.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how much, because I've spent a lot of my life chasing things, thinking they were going to make me happy. And it's really deep connection with people, having the meaningful pursuits and doing the hard things. That's why I talk about doing hard things. Like, it's going through that experience, that challenge, and then rising up and achieving it, that gives you such fulfillment. It's the feelings of feeling alive. Like, what are those activities and doing those things? It's not about, I mean, yeah, money gives you freedom to do things.
Yeah.
And we want to have abundance and create, but that shouldn't be when that is the main focus. You're going to lose sight, and you're not going to feel fulfilled. And I feel like I've had to learn that the hard way.
Well, that's how you learn. That's right. That's what separates entrepreneurs from everyone else. They learn. That's it. That's the answer. So that's why. I mean, it'll be interesting. I go back into every now and then when I'm running outside. It was 7 degrees today. Okay, whatever. But I listen to old interviews that I've done from like 2017 or 2018, because I like to hear how the evolution has happened, but then the fundamental things that have stayed the same and why I'm like this now. And it'll be interesting to listen to this from your perspective, if I listen to this in like 2024 or 25, to see how far you've evolved. That'll be an interesting, because you have the mindset and the foundation. Now you just need the time. You need the time and the learning.
Yeah. Well, I know for me personally, I'm putting in the work. I've got a vision of how I want to grow this.
Oh, you'll do it.
Yeah. And so I am so tremendously grateful, because 10 years ago I dreaded getting out of the military because I had no idea what I was going to do, and just the thought of going to work for another organization just did not seem appealing. So I appreciate you saying that. I really appreciate that.
Well, I see it. I mean, I just know. I mean that the reason I wrote first book is literally for people like you, because people are like, how did you do this? I don't have any business background. I didn't even know you had to pay taxes 4 times a year. Now I have, and by the way, the book was written before I even had second company, before I even had it. And I was reading Chris Voss did the foreword,
Oh yeah.
Yes, right.
Don't split the difference. Yeah.
You wrote the forward for my book. I'm very so it's really interesting. Hold on, I'm going to read this because this is what I mean. The answers are already there, and that's why I think it'll be interesting for you to listen to this interview a couple of years from now. So okay, so he owns the Black Swan Group. So this is in the forward, like that he wrote. Like the success of the Black Swan Group, where I used my years of expertise as a negotiator to build a business that created a groundbreaking model that helps businesses and brands everywhere. BrEpic is doing the same thing with its approach to public relations and building real relationships with a global network. My new company is called BrEpic Network. It's just written about in 2019. It was there. It was already there. So it's a really fascinating thing to see where you come from to where you are and then where you're going. But where I was going was where I come from. It was already there.
Yeah.
But that's you. That's you.
Well, I appreciate that. I like the perspective. So thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully it's helpful.
Well, so we're just over an hour, and what I usually like to kind of end the podcast with are a few high performance questions. And like you said earlier, you often answer the questions before you're asked, and you already answered some of my questions because some of the questions that I ask are, what does your morning routine look like? What are some of the most impactful books? How do you connect with your wife? But in a little bit more detail, because I'm fascinated with high performers and their morning routine. What does your routine look like? Like, when do you wake up? What do you have for breakfast? What does that look like? How do you prime the day?
Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Okay. He's priming the day. He's getting something.
All right. Yeah. So this is it. They're not a sponsor.
All right, here we go.
All right. So here we go. Yeah, I drink this.
Brain Octane. Oh yeah, bulletproof.
Yeah.
Bulletproof coffee.
So I drink that with a cup of coffee for breakfast.
Yeah.
And
MCT oil
every breakfast. And then I have a banana or a very light lunch, and then I eat whatever I want for dinner. And sleep is what I'm working on the most for this year. There's a great podcast, Catherine Nicolai, Nothing Much Happens. It has been a game changer. I listened to it, and she tells bedtime stories for adults. It has like 56 million downloads.
Catherine Nicolai?
Yeah, Catherine Nicolai.
And what's the name of the podcast?
Nothing Much Happens.
Nothing Much
Just
Happens.
listen to it, and you're out. So that's my main goal health-wise, is to sleep 8 hours, 7-8 hours straight. That's the main goal. But, my kids keep me, because of my dad, I really, I have this, I should be like 80 years old. My dad was born in 1916, so I should have been born around D-Day. I mean, somewhere. And so it's like I'm an old soul in 44-year-old body, and I have the childish mindset of maybe a 4-year-old. I'm like a child. So like my wife has 3 children, my sons, and then me. And I think having that childish kid-like mindset is incredibly important. I'm like a child. So, yeah.
Like to play. Keep it young.
Yeah. Well, I can barely take care of myself, let alone, And that's why I think I married a pediatrician. She sensed that. She sensed, oh, hey, someone I can take care of.
Now, you mentioned you run 6 days a week. What does that typically look like? Are you training for anything?
No.
How far do you run?
No, I'm training. Yeah, 3 to 5 miles.
3 to 5 miles. Okay.
Yeah. I'm just training my brain. Like I treat my brain like a muscle.
Yeah. Okay. So good, proper fuel, focus on sleep. Get out there, get after it. 7-degree day today. You're out there running in Chicago. It gets cold up there.
I actually prefer negative degrees to like 80, 90. I love it. That separates that's like entrepreneur life. That separates
Yeah.
us.
I'm doing 75 hard right now, and getting over COVID. I haven't been running, but I've been rucking and walking. And like this morning here, it's like 0 degrees, and it's just, it initially sucks, but it's like you get out there and you do it, and it
feels great.
It feels good, and it feels like you accomplished something.
100%. Well, and it's great because my kids are they're 7 and 9, and they're running 5Ks now. The 9-year-old he's just like me. He did a 22 5K, which for a 9-year-old, that's
awesome.
That's ridiculous. I mean, but that's the best part, is that They and my wife too, they see both of us, we never make excuses. So they're growing up and do hard things, life, family, but then enjoying the fruits of doing hard things, enjoying that. Yeah.
No, it's awesome. All right. So you mentioned one book that was incredibly impactful. Aside from your own and A Man's Search for Meaning, what other two books have made the greatest impact on you?
Oh yeah. So sometime, yeah. So here's two of them. Here's two. There. Okay. So here we go. Yep, there we go. Gap in the Gain.
The Gap and Gain.
So Dan Sullivan, top entrepreneurial coaches ever lived. I'm very, very confident saying that. And then Ben Hardy. Ben actually interviewed me for this book. I'm very grateful for that. Ben's like top read author on Medium. He's in Strategic Coach as well. But Gap in the Gain is the single most important concept for any high performing entrepreneur. Because most high performing entrepreneurs live in the gap, what they don't have, instead of appreciating what they do. So that's right up there. And here's the other one. So I just keep these all.
The Daily Laws.
Yeah. So Robert Greene, besides Viktor Frankl, is my favorite author. Robert Greene, former journalist like me, and just a brilliant writer. And then he writes about how people became masters, like how Ben Franklin became a master, or Da Vinci, or living people like that. And it's endlessly fascinating to me to see you talk about high performers. These are the ultimate ones. And then this book is, here I'll show it's daily snippets. So there's 366 of these. So
I like books like that you can just get a nugget out of,
Well, here's a good one from January 20th, yesterday. We must create our own world or we will die from inaction. So I actually highlighted that. I never highlight anything, but that one I did.
You got it earmarked too.
Well, yeah, because today's January 21st, so I have to read, but and again, I just treat my brain like a muscle, and then you just build, and it just keeps getting better and better and better.
It's awesome. Love it. Love it. All right. Well, what do I need? What did I fail to ask you that people need to know about you and what you're working on?
I mean, it's a tremendous interview. My site, the first company, is BrEpicLLC.com. The reason why I'm mentioning that, BrEpicLLC.com, is there's a mindset survey. There's a mindset. It takes 5 minutes. People love it. They love it. They don't game the survey, and people actually qualify or disqualify themselves with their own mindset. And then if they do disqualify themselves, they're like, "Oh, this is what I need to. Why am I thinking like that? Maybe I can do something about that." So, if you want to put that link,
I'll add that link to the show notes.
Yeah, people love taking it, and I've had in over a year of having it, 2 people have gamed it. Yeah.
Well, if you try to game it, you're just cutting yourself short.
So that's an interesting point, because in the written test, I've only seen it twice that they game it, but verbally people will game it. They'll game it. They'll say something that they don't mean. In a written thing where you're looking at it, like, why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense. But it has happened twice.
Huh. Well, as we wrap up this interview, I always like to pass the mic off to my guest to ask me a question. So what do you have for me?
I mean, are you going to make any excuses on this journey? That's really the only one that matters to me. So,
no, I am fully committed. I'm still trying to determine specifically I think you made a great point. It's like you're gonna get. I feel like I have clarity, but it's still, like you said, I'm not quite at the 2-year mark, and I'm still, as I build a block every day, I show up and I build and I build and I build. Even on the days I don't want to, I do something. Mm-hmm. And no, like I mean, I want to serve people. I want my freedom so I can be with my kids and my family and make an impact. And that's what I'm building. And I don't exactly know like the specific end state, but I have a big vision. So as I continue to maneuver through this, I'm going to gain clarity, but there's nothing stopping this train. It's going to happen.
Okay. Okay, that's good. That's the right answer. That's
Yeah.
the only answer. If you want to be someone like this, that's the only answer.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for the question. I love those types of questions. It really makes me think of it. So, well, Justin, I'll put all the links to contact you in the show notes. But how can people reach out to you?
Sure, Justin Breen on LinkedIn would be fine. But again, that taking that mindset survey is that's the for serious people. The serious people will do that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I'll link that in the show notes if you want to connect. Take the survey and connect with Justin. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for serving our country. It's greatly appreciated.
I'm honored, and thank you for the work that you're doing in the service of your father and everything that you imparted today. I thought great, fantastic interview. So thank you.
Thank you.